Start with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to say two after that.
I always want to say play
Because
ball.
one is the pledge, two is,
It's after. Those are the last 2 years.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, public.
bring a pair. Bring them all. Mark it right there.
Would you like a piece of paper?
Yeah, I'll scribble on this. That way I know exactly where I'm at.
Okay, we're ready to go. So I don't see anyone for public input. Let's move on to selecting the budget committee chair. And since the budget committee chair comes from our budget committee representatives, Lisa, you're it.
That works.
Okay, so I just need to have a.
I'll make a motion to appoint Denise as budget chairperson.
All right.
I second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second, and is there any discussion? Okay, all of those in favor, please raise your hand. Woo, woo. Okay. And so Denise, as the budget committee chair, you get to take over the leading of the budget committee meeting and acknowledge Aaron for the budget message. Okay.
Turning it over to Aaron for the school district 2CJ's budget message.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for being patient in our process as we put this together. I am going to go ahead and read the budget message, which is in the page 1. Budget package, and then we'll go through, describe the budget, the process, and how we go through to complete our work so that we do end up with an adopted budget by the board, one that is approved by the budget committee with the recommendations to adopt the board. All right, so the formal budget message. This budget message is presented in continuing uncertain financial times due to the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. Federal ESSER III funding to help with COVID recovery will no longer be available, and student enrollment across the state continues to decrease. The 2024-25 school year is the second year in the state of Oregon's budgetary biennium, with the school budget being based on an allotment of $10.2 billion for the state school fund. And this district budget is based on that amount. This balanced budget is also being prepared with the assumption that estimated student enrollment will increase to 245 students for the 24-25 school year. Despite this uncertain financial outlook, the Port Orford-Langlois School District 2CJ does not anticipate any staff reductions or program changes for the 24-25 school year. We are in good shape. Funding allotted to schools for this biennium is distributed on a 49-51% basis. With this, the second year of the state school fund biennium funding at 51% of the overall allocation. This split helps pay for increased roll-up costs in the second year of the state budgeting process. In addition to state school fund dollars, the district will also receive full funding from High School Success Measure 98 dollars at approximately $80,000, which must be spent in one of three areas: career and technical education programs, college-going educational opportunities, and dropout prevention. Measure 98 funds are designated in the special revenues section 200s of this document. Also included in the special revenues section of this budget, 200s, are funds from the state's student investment account. These SIA grant funds total $338,121 in this year's budget. And this funding stream allows the district to support K-12 counseling, the community liaison coordinator position, more opportunities for local students to access Head Start, a portion of our CTE teacher position, and other educational efforts. One item no longer in the budget are ESSER 3 federal grant dollars that were allocated for COVID-19 recovery efforts. These funds are no longer available and were all expended as part of last year's budgeting and expenditure process. Given these revenue sources, the following budget is balanced with expenditures that fund all current positions, programs, and supplies at existing levels. And while current levels and staffing will be maintained, they also come with a higher price tag each year. Roll-up costs for contractual agreements with staff, increasing insurance costs, higher PERS rates, and increasing utility costs are all included as current levels. And those wages are 5% increases for each of our classified and licensed group. This budget is based on revenue consisting of $2,224,569 from the state school fund, added to a beginning fund balance of $2.3 million, coupled with special revenue funds of $1,852,433 and a variety of other smaller grants embedded in this document. It brings total available resources for the district equal to $8,945,620. Utilizing these revenues effectively as laid out in this 24-25 budget document will allow the district to not only sustain staffing levels, but increase them. A new vice principal will be added to the district, to the Driftwood school staff, while the current superintendent will no longer be compensated for principal duties at Driftwood. The retirement of a part-time employee and other grant opportunities made available through our partnership with the South Coast Educational Service District will allow for this position to be a 1.0 full-time FTE teaching position at Pacific High School next year, while another teaching position formerly funded with ESSER funds will be moved into the general fund budget. These are the main changes and additions from the 23-24 budget. This budget will sustain staffing and programs in the Port Orford-Langlois 2CJ school district, providing our students with effective, varied educational opportunities that meet the needs of each one of them individually.
Okay,
Questions at this point? Questions can't be answered. So.
all right. So we are now at description of budget.
I mean, that would be good. So is everybody noticed when we came in today, you had a little clip bar, kind of a little play on words. In Aaron's speech, our effort created. And across the state, or across the nation, actually, you're hearing of all these huge budget cuts because everybody put their wages in ESSER. Those were temporary funds. We did not do that at this district. We did put a couple temporary positions there, but we were able to find places to reallocate those. And therefore we did not hit that fiscal cliff of what do we do now? So.
For all the people who were part of that decision.
I inherited it.
Jared, can you pull me up on the screen?
You have to start sharing.
Okay, so just a quick recap of the agenda. We already are kind of halfway through this little agenda here. And so we're gonna go through a little presentation here of what is a budget? Why do we need one? Sources of funding, their uses, account code structures, which will kind of help go through the reading of the budget. General questions and comments, and upcoming budget meetings and what's next. Of course, at TCJ, our vision is we are here to help our students navigate challenges with grace, prepare for their futures, and anchor themselves within our community. What is a budget? The budget is the district's financial roadmap. It's kind of just to give us an estimate of where we're at financially and an estimate of what the next year is going to cost us. Why is a budget required by law? Taxpayers fund, it should say school district as well as schools, requiring our agency to be accountable and transparent in its transparency and accountability are facilitated by budget law through uniform procedures, independent committee members, public meetings, and public participation. Who is the budget committee? A budget committee is a group of district board members and citizens that review the district's proposed budget. Sorry, I'm not really good at presenting in front of groups, so the committee is composed of the board of directors and an equal number of district citizens. Each committee member has the same authority, whether they're appointed citizen or director of the board. The committee reviews the budget at a public meeting, and the public is encouraged to attend because one of the most important purposes of the committee is to take comment and questions and from interested citizens. What the budget committee cannot do. The budget committee does not set salaries, benefits, or contract terms for employees or administrators. That's what we have Aaron for. The budget committee does not set staffing levels. The budget committee does not decide whether or not a service or program should be provided. The budget committee does not make district policies. Can the budget committee change the budget? The budget committee has the authority to change the superintendent's proposed budget within the limitations of specified previously. After the committee approves the proposed budget and refers it to the board also has the authority to change the approved budget. There are two limitations placed on the board. If the board increases expenditures in the funds more than 10%, then the budget must go through the supplemental budget process. The board does not have the authority to increase taxes approved by the committee. How does the budget committee approve the budget and refer it to the board? The approval process is repeated each year. First, the superintendent/budget officer presents the proposed budget to the committee. That's what we're doing here today. Second, the committee reviews the proposed budget by asking questions of the superintendent. Procedures will be followed. Receives input from the public and requests changes to the budget. That will happen at our second budget meeting. And third, the committee approves both proposed spending and taxing. And then the committee recommends the budget to the school board, which we are hoping to have done next Monday. Pretty quick process. The budget development process, we kind of monitor over, amount of time throughout the year and assesses needs for the next fiscal year. So last year we realized it wasn't quite working with Aaron being two places at once, wearing 500 hats. So we decided that we really need a second admin down at Driftwood. So, and a couple other things. So just kind of watch and see what we need and go from there. We developed a resource estimate based on the governor's proposed budget. We developed the proposed budget based on the estimated revenue and requirements, conduct the budget committee meetings, hold the public hearing for the budget, and then we finally adopt the budget and taxes. So the budget definition overview. So In the budget, you're gonna see two funds, our 100 fund, which is our general fund. It's our basic, operating budget. And then we also have our 200 special revenues. Those are broke down like 201, 202, and so forth, but we have hundreds of grants. So if we broke them down specifically by each grant, we would have a 1,000-page document. So we roll them all up into 200. The functions, which is the next set of numbers that you will see in the budget, is broke down. It just goes down like the 1,000s are instruction level, 2,000s are support services. So that would be like the digital office, maintenance, office of the principal, that kind of stuff. 3,000 is enterprise and community service. And 4,000 is facility acquisitions and construction.
And if you look in your budget document on pages 1, 2, and 3, there's overview that spells out there, if you need to look back later.
6,000 is our contingency, so that would be money that we set aside just in case of an emergency, because life happens and you always want to have an emergency plan. And then 7,000 is unappropriated ending fund balance, so that's just,
You are required to have that.
yeah, it's a little set aside just in case something comes up and we don't have a place to put it.
Contingency is for if you have something come up. Unappropriated ending fund balances to get you through.
Yeah, we have triple
Before.
payroll with summer, so.
Yeah.
The ending fund balance is critical, so we make payroll.
It gets you through the dry months when no taxes come through.
And then the next set of numbers, so the third set of numbers you'll see is the object that breaks it down more specifically. So like 100s are salaries, 200s are employee benefits and payroll costs. 300s are purchase services. So it's, you have a contractor come in like, and do services on our gym floor. So that would come out of the 300 fund. 400s are supplies and materials, pens, papers, and textbooks. 500 is capital outlay, so that would be anything building and facility wise. 600 is other objects. We don't know where to put this. That's kind of where it's going to go. And then 700 would be transfers. So you will see in the budget there is a fairly decent size transfer that we have in there, and that is money we are putting into capital projects for our Driftwood office move and Pacific High School window replacement. That kind of stuff that we have the money now, but we need to put it someplace to carry it over to the next fiscal year. Okay, account code structures. So, the nice fun part of my job, our account codes are set into 13-digit account codes. The first set of numbers is 3 digits long. That is your fund. The second set of numbers, 4 digits long, is our function. So that is, what is this helping us do? Third set of numbers is just 4 digits long, is the object. So this is like specifically, what is this item? And then the fourth set of numbers is 3-digit long, the location. So what building is this benefiting? And the last is the area of responsibility. So like at the bottom there is a little example. So if I look at that code, that's going to tell me that's coming out of the general fund. It's Pacific High School extracurricular. Object is a consumable supply. So it could have been something like a Band-Aid. And it's 612 is Pacific High School and 230 is athletics. So this would be the athletics team bought a Band-Aid. And the types of funds, like we said, we have the 100 general fund and then the 200 special revenues. So we kind of broke down the 200s here just to kind of show you some examples of the 200 funds. So we have 205 is our food service. So that's our lunch program. We have 252, which is SIA grant, or 250, which is Title I. And those are some of our big revenues. So the 24-25 budget assumptions, resources. So based upon the allocations of the governor's $10.2 billion for the biennium, we are now in the second year of the of the biennium, the 51% allocations. Estimated enrollment, for next year is looking to be about 225 students, possibly even more.
Yeah, that is the number that we try to hit close to as close as possible. But if we're gonna be off, we want to be off a little bit low rather than high, because if we are high, they will give us more money and we'll have to pay it back. If we are low, we will gain more money and we'll get a credit.
But we won't see that for like 2 more
It
years.
is a long process. We can make those adjustments.
And
For 2 years?
Yeah, it's about 2 years every May.
I accidentally jumped ahead here. So, the estimated beginning fund balance of about $2 million. PowerPoint is a little outdated here by a couple of days. We've actually rounded that up, so it's in Aaron's, address. It is actually closer to 2.3 million.
And that will likely stay about there, because at this point, we still have a few expenditures. But there are some areas where, not every bit of money in a fund will be spent. So that's why the ending fund balance moved from 2 to 2.3 since time of this was put together.
And a rollover, right?
Rollover, but like if we had allotted a full-time position for an assistant for the entire year and we were only able to hire someone in January, there's 6 months of salary there that's an add to the budget.
Okay. And so, in this budget, we've assumed kind of, some of the expenditures. Of course, just like with everything, salaries, benefits are increasing as well as, electricity, food, water, everything in life right now is on the uphill trend. We budgeted for about 5% increase all the way across the board. Fuel prices are going up and hopefully going down, but,
And I think I shared earlier that our contractual agreements with our licensed staff, our teachers, as well as our classified are both at the 5% range as well.
and so, okay, so I wrote that sentence and I meant to delete that one. Okay, so we're also, working on, currently, so we have a couple projects that we are carrying over the fiscal year. And, they will be completed in next year, so you will see that funds transfer going from the general fund to the capital projects, and that would be the Pacific High School window replacement, Driftwood office relocation, and we track restroom revitalization. So hopefully by the end of summer, we will have restrooms available down at the tracks, which will be a huge.
They were working on them again today. And those are all items that are in this budget. They are coming out of the general fund in the capital projects, as Tara shared. But the reality of where that money came from is from ESSER funds. So that is the remaining money that we had from ESSER that was allotted for those projects. The state of Oregon gave us a way to account for them so that we could go ahead and zero out our ESSER dollars for this year, put it into a fund for next year, and it's really kind of a shell game, but it's the way we were able to zero out and utilize all of our ESSER funds and use it for purposes that we needed, again, that were not salary related.
So in the 24-25 budget compared to the 23-24 budget, you'll see some of the following changes. We just want to kind of highlight some of the big changes. Of course, the Driftwood Elementary office, it has a vice principal added to office of the principal, which will be on page 18. And I know on your guys' little note-taking things, it doesn't show that very well. It's really tiny. So if you want to look for that in your, then you might want to make a quick note.
In fact, let's go ahead and look at that one, if you don't mind me taking just a second. Let's look at that one. It is in Fund 100. So it's going to be at the very top banner. It's going to say Fund 100 General Fund. And this one is on page 17. Numbers are at the bottom and the middle. Some pages you can see them, on some pages they mesh together, on 17 they mesh together. But at the top of Fund 100 General Fund, it says Executive ADM Service. That's the very first line. So this expenditure at Driftwood Elementary is in the office of the principal. So you're on Fund 100 General Fund, and then you'll notice that there are functions. The first function on page 17 is 2320 Executive ADM Services. If you go down to the next function, it is function 2410 Office of the Principal. So we've got a 100, 2410, and then the next number for this is 113. That is the
Object.
Thank you. That is the object. And so the 113 for managerial license salaries, if that is the line that's being affected. And if you go over, you'll notice that that line was at 154,035 from the adopted budget for this year with an FTE of 1.67. That was something that the board changed to add principal. Why it's not at 2. The budget was made before I was hired as principal. But this next year, you'll notice in the proposed amount that goes up to 296,363 and 3 FTE. So that accounts for Mr. Brown, that accounts for Mr. Stallard, and that accounts for Mrs. Wendell. So we now have 3 FTE there. That is the change from 1.67 that was adopted in the budget last year to 3.0 this year in the office of the principal. And then the numbers for salary are up accordingly. So that's just an example of how you utilize the numbers and where things are located a little bit as you go through here. So sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. And then of course at Pacific High School, we've added the FTE of 0.5 by increasing our English language arts positions to a full-time equivalency of 1. As Aaron explained in his budget message, that we, with a teacher retiring this year, we were able to change that position to a full-time position. We also did add one of our teachers who was hired as an ESSER position. We added that teacher as a full-time general fund position as well. As well as about 5 aides.
Yes, and there are a couple of granting pieces that come into play with those. We have a language position that the ESD is going to utilize to provide language services, foreign language services to other districts that can't do that for themselves. That will bring us some money. We also have another grant that will help fund some remote learning type things here. So we've rated those funding sources to be able to add those FTE at the high school with little impact to the budget.
And we've also did some kind of moving of some numbers around. Prior years, our classroom budgets have been coming out of office of the principal. We have each year, each teacher gets a set amount of money to be able to buy classroom supplies for their classroom and their curriculum. And it's been coming out of office of the principal. That's not a true accurate reflection of where that money is going. All of a sudden, it looks like Shane's over here having a shopping spree, and it's really going to pencils and paper for that specific classroom. So we moved that to instructional supplies.
Thank you.
Um,
And that item is one item that we moved this year. And it was intentional, so the budget is more transparent. It also makes it easier for us to budget for those things, to really look at what we're talking about. And as Tara and I move through and continue to work together on future budgets, we're gonna look to clean some other items up and get them designated, so it's really easy to see how much money we have for certain activities, whether it's textbooks, whether it's ELA positions, whether it's classroom supplies, field trips, want to get those things delineated so that it makes sense where they're supposed to be. Closure function. What was that? Make sure I'm looking at the right thing. That one, those classroom teacher budgets that got moved out of the office of the principal are now listed in, underneath each school with the educational services. So if you go back to page 9, yep, you'll see the 100 general fund again. And then your first function is 1111, the elementary instruction. And then you go down to 410. It's consumable supplies. That number went from 0 to 3,000. And then if you look in the high school budget on page 11, there are consumable supplies and non-consumable supplies. And those both went from zeros to 3,000 and 20,000 accordingly. So that money that used to be in office of the principal to pay for classroom supplies is now designated in there as classroom supplies at the school.
And the definition of non-consumable supplies is something that we're expected to have a life of 5 years or greater.
Could I ask another question? So in the example you had of the principals, so those 3 principal positions, that is not, the office of principal is not associated with one school, that is district-wide. Am I reading that correctly?
In this
Okay.
budget, that is an item that I
Okay.
would like to start working on as well.
Okay.
We designate how much admin FTE is in each
Okay,
building.
okay,
And so technically, when we get to the budget next year, chain's gonna be 0.33 in 2 buildings and 0.34 in another.
okay,
Or 0.67 and 0.33, depending on how we designate, because we could go down to middle and high school, even though they're in the same building.
oh,
They're
right,
delineated
okay,
in the budget
Okay.
as separate schools.
okay, but for this budget, the
For this
principal is
budget,
just
office
all
of the principal is district wide.
Okay, thank
A
you.
little messed up, you can fix that.
And for the state purposes and state reporting purposes, middle school is still classified as grade school. So.
Right.
That's a whole nother-
That's a whole nother piece that eventually will need to either get cleaned up or
Continue to work around.
we can work around, but. And so we have also budgeted a $500,000 into the contingency fund, which is on page 25. $250,000 into unappropriated ending fund balance on page 26. Special revenue, some of the changes, we did add a K-5 reading specialist funded through the early literacy grant and Title I. We plan on splitting that position probably 50-50 on that one.
And so when we have positions that are split, even though we added a 1.0 FTE reading specialist, you're not gonna go into the elementary school and find a 1.0 addition in the FTE. I think a third of it is in the general fund, and then the remaining portion is in the 200s from the early literacy. So there, with us sharing staff, there's a lot of things in there with the FTE that may not look right, but it's because we split people between buildings.
It looks right. If you know what.
Yes, if you know where it's at, but those are, again, those are some of the things that I want Tara and I to clean up so that it's, the mud is a little clearer. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
ESSER funding has ended, and so we were lucky enough to plan very well and are able to maintain our service level and staffing levels. One thing that has not been accounted for in the budget that we will hopefully be adding or will need to do a supplemental budget on is we are anticipating getting 2 TAP grants of $40,000 each. And one of which is for a facilities assessment to be able to bring someone in to go around our facilities and say, wow, you need to update this. I mean, a lot of us can walk around the building and say, wow, we need to update that, and that, but to have a professional say it is.
To get any other grants, you have to have that.
Well, that, I'm gonna explain that when she's done with the next one, yep.
And then also is the next $40,000 is a long-range facilities plan. So we'll have a project manager come in and say, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this should be priority 1, priority 2, and this is how we can plan this out and how much it's gonna cost.
And then we work administratively and with the community and the staff to share those things, determine need. And by taking care of both of those TAP grants through the state, that makes us eligible for matching funds if we go out for a bond, which I've shared with the board, is a plan of mine to at least float and see what's needed and what's possible, what the community would support, and then move forward. But the bottom line is if we get both of those grants done and the work done and accomplished, we're eligible for matching funds. And we could, in theory, have the community approve $6 million in bonding, and we would receive $12 million in funding through the state's offer.
Double money, that's a great one.
Yeah.
So we're also,
My favorite thing.
within the next year, we are going to be changing some of the funding numbers. So that list of funding numbers in the 200 range, we are having to change those so that everybody across the state is aligned. So we're gonna be next year's budget, if you're so,
Different.
you know, here on next year's budget, there will be quite a bit of changes, so. And next steps in the budgeting process, of course, the board and the budget committee will review the budget documents. So we're asking that you take these home with you tonight. And the board and budget committee will send any questions to the district office by Wednesday, the 12th at 5 p.m. So if you guys come up with any questions, please note them, send us a list of all your questions, and we will reply back to everybody. The second budget committee meeting will be next Monday, June 17th at 5:30 p.m., at which time we hope to have everybody's questions answered, everything finalized, and hope to have the budget committee approve the budget as presented. And at that board meeting at 6 o'clock, we're going to have our public hearing and hoping to have the board approve the presented budget and approve the tax levies.
And actually, the board adopts.
Adopts.
So you as a committee are going to approve and send that approval recommendation to the board. And then the board makes their decision on their own to adopt that budget that you recommended. And then one other caveat I wanted here, we are late in the process, as you know. 1 week is a quick turnaround. We don't have a lot of changes in the budget, but I want everybody to know that if that is not enough time for you, we do have to have this done before we leave in June. So if these timelines don't work, then sometime between the 17th and the 30th, we would have to have another meeting to go through and finalize the process. If we thought we were in jeopardy of some real controversy, we would want to leave ourselves enough time for 2 more meetings. Don't think that that's necessary, given the few changes that we're making. And the fact that we are sitting in a good spot with money that's left over. And waiting in reserve. And how we weathered the storm of going through ESSER 3 and all the federal funds going away. I think we're in a very good place. But my opinion here is not any part of a vote for the budget committee. I'm not a part of that. That's all you. So if it takes longer, we have a plan to make that work. It has to be done before the end of June. But if possible, we fit within these timelines, get questions asked by Wednesday. Then Tara and I on Thursday are going to go through and we'll answer each and every question. And we will send out each question and answer to each and every one of you. So if Denise asks a question, everybody's gonna get to hear the question and the answer. If Corinne asks it, same thing, so that we all get the same information, and the same answers.
Don't be afraid to ask any questions.
And phone calls are okay too. If a phone call comes in, and you have a question, we can answer it by phone. That may be easier. Or by email. But if you call in with a phone question, we're gonna write it down. We're gonna give the answer to everybody, just like it was an email. I would ask that if you email, do not email the group, even though you've got a group, budget message or invite. The board is still considered to be the board. So if we have back and forth conversation about this, then it is considered an ongoing open board meeting and we wouldn't be following the rules of that, so we'd be out of compliance. So if you've got email questions, send them individually. The information is going to go back out to you as a group. If you had a question from the information from the answer, that would again come individually. And then we would send out the answer as a group.
On behalf of the Orford-Langlois School District, PCJ, Superintendent Aaron Miller, and myself, we want to say thank you for your service, accountability, and time to this commitment. And we know that volunteering is not always easy, but we do appreciate it. If you have any questions, my email address is on the final page of the PowerPoint. I also gave you guys each one of. And some of them, I'm sorry, I ran out of business cards, so some of them are kind of.
I think you all have my emails.
If not yet, Stephanie, so she doesn't find us.
Everybody's email.
So, that's a lot of information to start with. It is a big document. And, it takes a little while to get comfortable moving through it, but, does anybody have any questions?
Can I make a comment? If any of your board of the school board has not gone through the state of Oregon's municipal budget class, it is online, it is a video, it is free. If you want to make sure that you understand what you're doing, take it, watch it. You can download the state of Oregon's budgeting manual. Anybody on a board dealing with budgets like this, they talk about school budgets. I think they have a video specifically about school budgets. But even if you just watch the basic ones, you will have a much better grounding of what you are looking at, what you're doing, and what your purpose is with the budget. I've taken them for 10 years, every year. I probably could, but
Where do we find it again?
go on to municipal or state of Oregon municipal budgets. And there'll be links there and it's a .gov. As long as you've got the .gov, you're good. But yeah, they're there. All the handouts are there for you to download. The books are there for you to download. They just redid the budgeting handbook. So it's not 9 years old anymore. It is actually 2024. So it is a brand new book with all of the updates that the state has just gone through. And your board should all have a copy of that. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah, don't worry about it until next week. Let's get through this. And then after that, if you've got more time on your board, definitely watch one of those in your free time. They offer it every year at the start of the year before budgeting season happens. Although my budget season starts in December. That's when I start working on it. So. And I know I was slightly anal about where's the documents, where are the documents? I've got to have documents.
They're not the only one. I might have been feeling that same way. I believe what we've got is a good document for you. It is balanced. does keep us financially stable. I know when I first started teaching and into admin, I heard a lot of people say they were switching from adding everything and trying to hide money to being more transparent. And believe in the same thing. We have to share where the money's going and how we're spending it. But we do try to budget conservatively so that when we get to the end of each year, our ending fund balance goes from 2 million to 2.3 rather than 2 to 1.7.
It's a balancing act.
We want to make sure that if we make not errors, but if we're off in calculating or something happens, we try as hard as we can to have those things end up in our favor.
I really appreciate the presentation. That's super helpful. I would actually love to have a copy of either the whole thing or that specifically that 24-25 budget changes. Because usually as I glance through a budget and try to like make sense of it in my head, I'm always looking at what was last year, what was this year. And so it would be helpful to just have that in front of me if that's possible.
Just email them the presentation.
That'd be perfect. All right, that'd be great. That will save me asking unnecessary questions that I can figure out.
So in here, they're showing you your actuals for
Mhm.
fiscal year 21, 22, and
Mhm.
22. So you're seeing all the last, the past,
Exactly.
which is required on the
Mhm.
budget document. You have to have the past
Mhm.
3, so the current and the past 2, and then what you're gonna go for.
There's a really
Right.
good.
So you should be able to do.
Yeah, that's
Look at
usually
this
what I do,
document,
right?
yeah.
It's a really good piece because you'll notice in some of those lines as you walk through that the beginning areas are zeros. And then you get numbers, and then you'll see some other areas
Right.
where there's numbers, and then it turns into zeros, and that all has to do with showing multiple years. And if we're just starting something this year, there's gonna be no history, but it has to be in the line. And if we're closing down some program, you're gonna see zeros and no FTEs now where there were in the past. So it's a really good point.
Kind of the caveat off of that is the big one for this year. There's a lot of zeros under some of the areas. Is because of Esther going.
Some of those got moved to other places, so.
Yes.
That's very understandable. I am very happy to see unappropriated ending fund balances and contingencies. Cause I noticed that in some of theirs, in the basic, there was no contingency. Hell is going on with that?
It's all really ending fund balance, because hopefully we don't have contingency we have to spend it on, and that just goes into next.
Right,
year's
and it
budget,
just
but it's there to
rolls,
spend
but-
If we have an emergency.
You have to put it there because you can't touch your unappropriated ending fund balance unless it's an act of God.
You go through
That is the
whole-
money that you are not touching until the next fiscal to get you through your dry months.
Yeah,
So, yeah. We almost hit that one. It's like, you need an act of God because I need that money. But, yeah, but looks good so far when I'm looking. I'm happy to see those 2 things in there and listed, so.
I will note that if you look in the special revenue fund, there's another 75,000 of unappropriated,
Cool beans.
so that we've got a.
That's how that's how you get to be conservative in making sure that you've got enough, because you could go to the state and say, oh my God, and they will allow you to.
Well, with
Do
this
the
is the
thing.
second year of the biennium, so we are going to, on a year like this, we know what we're getting. But next year, when we go through the budgeting process, we will be going through the budgeting process and have everything pretty much done. And the legislature could still be meeting and not have a number for us until now.
Mhm.
So, next year's a tougher one to budget for, but it's also, that's another thing that we have to make sure we've got extra funding so that if they don't come through with as much as they should with roll-up costs, we can still cover things and weather the storm of not having cuts.
So
Work for.
if we are all done with all the presentations and stuff, then I call for an adjourn. Do we have,
We adjourn the budget meeting.
I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Denise.
Let us know any questions.